Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are not just reading a book. We're basically dismantling a monolith.
We really are.
Yeah, we are lighting a torch and stepping into the text that arguably redefined the entire genre of modern fantasy. We're looking at George R.R. Martin's A Game of Thrones.
The opening salvo of A Song of Ice and Fire.
Exactly. And it was a massive topic, so buckle up because we are going deep.
It's a monolith, like you said. And it's really interesting because largely due to the massive cultural footprint of the television adaptation. You know, this story has completely saturated the global consciousness.
Oh, totally. Everyone knows the catchphrases.
Right. Everyone knows winter is coming.
Yeah.
Everyone knows about the dragons and the ice zombies. But our mission today is to push past all that pop culture noise. We want to go back to the source code.
To see what's actually on the page.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We want to look at the mechanics of how Martin built this world on the page because it is incredibly intricate.
Right, because when you actually open the book, which I did, again, just in preparation for this deep dive, it doesn't feel like a standard fantasy adventure.
Not at all.
It feels dense, heavy. There is this texture to the writing that makes the world feel incredibly old and just incredibly dangerous immediately. It's definitely not your standard knights in shining armor trope.
That texture is exactly what we need to unpack today. Because Martin isn't just telling a story about knights and dragons. He's engaging in a very specific deconstruction of the fantasy tropes that came before him.
Breaking down the rules.
Yeah, exactly. If you think about it, Tolkien established the rules of high fantasy. You have the noble king, the very clear line between good and evil, the eucatastrophe where everything is miraculously saved at the last moment.
And Martin basically takes a sledgehammer to those pillars.
He does. He has the questions that usually get skipped over in the epilogue. Things like, what happens to the noble king after the war is won? Or does being an honorable person actually keep you alive?
Or does it just make you a giant target?
Precisely. And he treats magic not as this wondrous tool for solving plot holes, but as a dangerous, unpredictable, and largely forgotten force. He treats politics not as just a backdrop for a quest, but as a lethal ecosystem.
A meat grinder.
Basically, yeah. And structurally, he does something brilliant. He weaves three completely distinct genres into one narrative.
So you've got the gothic horror happening on the northern border.
Right.
You've got this Machiavellian political thriller right in the capital.
Yep.
And then a really twisted version of the high fantasy hero's journey happening way out in the east.
Ice, politics, and fire. Those are the three threads we're going to pull apart today.
And we are going to be thorough for you guys. We aren't just skimming the surface here. We are looking at the specific rules of this deadly game Martin has created.
And it is a game with very specific rules. If you don't know them, you don't survive. It's that simple.
So let's set the stage. The source material immediately throws us into a setting that feels physically wrong.
It does. The very first thing we learn about this world is that the seasons are out of balance.
Which is such a wild concept.
It really is. This isn't just a backdrop or a cool quirk of the map. It's a fundamental condition of their existence. The text tells us this is a land where summers can last decades and winters a lifetime.
Which is terrifying if you really sit with it. I mean, imagine a winter that lasts 10 or 15 years. You'd have children born who have quite literally never seen the sun warm the ground.
And the source text describes the current time as a time of grim omens. We have this massive cast of characters. We've got lords, ladies, soldiers, sorcerers, assassins.
All on a collision course.
They are. But the structure of the story is really built around those three distinct conflicts we just mentioned.
Yeah.
They're slowly spiraling toward each other, but in this first volume, they are distinct enough for us to analyze them separately.
Okay, let's map those out clearly for you listening before we get into the weeds. So where do we start?
First, you have the North. This is the thread of ice. It involves the Night's Watch, this massive wall of ice, and the return of sinister supernatural forces that have basically been forgotten for thousands of years.
The things that go bump in the night.
Exactly. Then you have the second thread, which is the South. This is the political thriller aspect, the actual Game of Thrones.
Right.
This is all happening in King's Landing and involves the struggle for control of the Iron Throne and the Seven Kingdoms. It's all about whispers, spies, and leverage.
And the third thread.
The third is the East. This is the thread of fire. It follows Daenerys Targaryen, an exiled princess, the absolute last of the old ruling dynasty, just trying to survive and find a way back home.
Ice, politics, and fire. Okay, let's start where the book starts, the North. And I have to say, the prologue of A Game of Thrones is in my opinion, just an absolute masterclass in setting expectations.
It really is.
It's genuinely scary.
It is horror, pure and simple. And it establishes the stakes before we meet a single Stark or Lannister. We are introduced to 3 Rangers of the Night's Watch: Gaureded, Will, and Sir Waymar Royce.
And looking at our notes here, the dynamic between these 3 is fascinating because it immediately sets up the class conflict that permeates the entire series.
Let's talk about Sir Waymar Royce for a second, because he is the archetypal fantasy prince in appearance, right?
Oh, totally. He's handsome, he's highborn, he's the youngest son of this ancient house. The text literally describes him as slender as a knife. He absolutely looks the part of the hero.
He does. But look at how Martin describes his gear. This is so important. He's wearing black leather boots, black moleskin gloves, and a cloak made of sable. The text says it was thick and black and soft as sin.
Soft as sin. That's such a loaded phrase for a guy patrolling a frozen, deadly wasteland.
It tells you everything you need to know about him. He is wealthy, he is arrogant, and he is completely unprepared for the spiritual reality of the wild. He's treating this ranging like a luxury hunting trip.
Which is crazy.
Contrast that with Garrett and Will. They are veterans. They are low-born. And they are terrified because they can feel that something is fundamentally wrong with the woods that night.
They know the signs.
Right. They are riding these small, shaggy, Garen's practical horses, while Royce is just towering over them on this massive war horse.
And Royce is just insufferable. Garrett acts as the voice of experience. He tries to tell him, look, the wildlings are dead, the cold is unnatural, we really need to head back. And Royce just sneers at him. He literally asks if Garrett is unmanned by the dark.
It's hubris. Pure hubris. Is the arrogance of the South meeting the harsh reality of the North? Royce thinks his lineage and his expensive castle-forged steel will protect him. He thinks the rules of the court apply out here in the dark.
But the text is setting us up for the first major subversion. Because the enemy they encounter, it doesn't care who his father is.
Not even a little bit. Let's talk about that enemy. The others, or the White Walkers, as they're also known. The description here is so much more eerie than just your standard ice zombies. Martin really focuses on the silence.
The silence and the strange, terrible beauty of them. That's the disturbing part to me.
Yes. They aren't rotting corpses. Those are the whites, the reanimated dead. We'll get to them. The others are different. The text describes them as gaunt and hard as old bones, with flesh pale as milk. But it's their swords that really stand out.
Yeah, no human metal.
Right. The text says the sword was alive with moonlight, translucent like a shard of crystal, and when it touches steel, it shatters it. But honestly, the most terrifying aspect is the cold itself.
Oh, the cold.
Garrett gives this internal monologue about the cold that acts as a warning to the reader.
I have that exact note right here. He says, the real enemy isn't the snow or the wind, it's the cold. He says, it steals upon you quieter than will, and then it gets inside you and just fills you up.
And he says, nothing burns like the cold. That's the establishment of the supernatural reality right there. While everyone else in the book is worried about who sits on a pointy metal chair, the prologue tells us the real enemy is a force of nature. It's death itself.
But there's a moment with Royce here that I think surprises people on a first read. Because he's been such an arrogant jerk for the whole chapter, you fully expect him to cower. You expect him to die a coward's death. But he doesn't.
No, he doesn't. And that's the first real twist in Martin's playbook. When the monster appears, the arrogant lordling stands his ground. He shouts, "For Robert!" And he actually engages this supernatural monster in single combat.
It's a genuinely brave death.
It is. And this is Martin telling us right off the bat, characters are not one-dimensional. You can be an arrogant, entitled brat and still be incredibly brave. But, and this is the key takeaway, bravery doesn't save him.
He dies anyway. His fancy sword shatters. And then the true horror really kicks in. Because he rises again.
When he opened his visor, there was nothing inside but darkness and thick black blood.
That sets the ultimate stakes for the whole series. The dead are coming back.
Exactly. So we move from that terrifying opening to the structure that supposedly holds this threat back. The wall. The wall is described as shining like blue crystal. It's this massive, impossible barrier guarding the realms of men. And this brings us to Jon Snow.
Jon is one of our primary windows into this world. He's the bastard of Winterfell, and he decides to join the Night's Watch. But he has this very romanticized view of it, doesn't he?
He really does. He thinks it's this noble calling. He imagines standing on the wall, protecting the realm alongside all these honorable knights and heroes.
But the reality is a massive splash of cold water.
Literally and metaphorically. Yeah. Tyrion Lannister actually points this out to him later, but Jon sees it pretty immediately upon arrival. The Watch isn't a noble order anymore. It's basically a penal colony. Rapists, thieves, poachers.
It's a dumping ground for the unwanted of society.
Exactly. And Jon is shocked by the grimness of it all. But the threat is undeniably real. We see this when the dead bodies of Uther and Jafford 2 Rangers are brought back inside Castle Black.
This is the moment where the horror literally comes inside the house.
It is. Jon is confronted by a White in Lord Commander Mormont's own chambers. And this is a super pivotal moment for the lore of the world. Jon tries to fight it with a sword, and it just doesn't work.
Okay, he hacks at it, cuts off a whole hand, but the hand just keeps moving on its own.
Dead men sing no songs, the saying goes, but this dead man is very much active.
And he ends up saving Mormont with fire.
He throws the burning drapes onto the White. This is foreshadowing 101. In a song of ice and fire, fire is the weapon against the cold. It's the only known weakness of this enemy so far.
But notice how clumsy it is. This isn't a golden hero wielding a glowing magical sword. This is a terrified teenager throwing burning curtains at a walking corpse.
It's messy. It's desperate. That's the tone Martin strikes consistently.
So that's the threat on the perimeter. But let's move south to the center of the conflict, to Winterfell and the Stark family.
The Starks, described as harsh and unyielding as the land they were born to.
The very first introduction we get to Eddard, or Ned Stark, is him executing a man. And it's actually Gored, the survivor from the prologue.
It is. That deserter. And this scene defines Ned Stark perfectly. He doesn't enjoy doing it. Not at all. But he absolutely believes in the law.
And he has that famous line to his young son Bran, "The man who passes the sentence should swing the sword."
That is the Stark Code in a nutshell. A ruler cannot hide behind paid executioners. If you're going to take a man's life, you must look that man in the eye and hear his final words. It's about taking personal responsibility for your actions.
Which stands in stark contrast, pun intended, to the way things are done in the South, which we'll see later.
But I want to pause on that execution for a second.
Yeah.
Because Garrett was trying to warn them. He was rambling about the others. And Ned just completely dismisses it and executes him.
It's tragic irony. Ned is so bound by his code, so tightly bound by his rules, that he executes the only living witness to the existential threat coming for all of them.
His adherence to duty completely blinds him to the bigger picture. He dismisses the warning as the ramblings of a madman simply because it doesn't fit into his structured worldview.
And then, right after this execution, they find the direwolf pups in the snow.
This is such a heavy symbolic moment. They find a dead direwolf, which is the sigil of House Stark, huge, bigger than a pony, and it has a piece of a stag's antler jammed in its throat. And nearby is a dead stag, the sigil of House Baratheon.
It's a grim omen. The stag killed the wolf, and Ned and King Robert Baratheon are lifelong best friends.
It heavily suggests that Robert, or his house, will be the death of the Starks. It's a prophecy literally written in blood on the snow. But the pups themselves are significant too. There are 5 pups for the 5 true-born Stark children.
But then, who finds the 6th one?
Jon Snow, the outcast.
Jon finds the albino wolf, the runt of the litter. It's entirely apart from the others. Its eyes are red, and it makes absolutely no sound. He calls it Ghost.
It's a perfect mirror of Jon's own status in the family. He's part of the pack, but forever separate.
And it creates this intense bond. The Stark children and their wolves are metaphysically linked throughout the story. The wolves reflect their owners' personalities and ultimately their fates.
So the king eventually arrives at Winterfell, King Robert Baratheon. And this is our first look at the man who actually sits on the Iron Throne. And he is not what Jon expects.
Not at all. Jon expects a warrior god, the legendary man who killed Prince Rhaegar Targaryen with a warhammer. But Robert gets off his horse, and he is fat, red-faced, sweating heavily, and smells of wine. The text notes that Ned looks at him and sees a stranger.
Robert is deeply disillusioned. He tells Ned, "I ask you, Ned, what good is it to wear a crown?"
He's miserable.
Completely miserable. He won the war, he got the throne, but he lost the woman he actually loved, Lyanna Stark. And now he's trapped in a political marriage he hates and a job he is fundamentally bad at.
And it's a brilliant deconstruction of the happy ending. The hero won the rebellion, but the happily ever after is just a drunken, debt-ridden mess.
And Robert drags Ned right into it. He wants Ned to come south and be his hand, basically his chief administrator, because Jon Arryn, the previous hand, has died very suddenly.
And this leads to the catalyst for the entire political plot, the fall of Bran Stark.
Bran, who loves to climb the castle walls, he climbs the broken tower, and sees something he definitely shouldn't.
He sees Jaime and Cersei Lannister, the queen, and her twin brother, in a very compromising situation.
Incest.
Yeah, it's the secret that holds the entire kingdom together. If this gets out, Robert's children are revealed as bastards, and the entire line of succession collapses.
So Jaime does the unthinkable. He pushes a 10-year-old boy out of a high window.
Things I do for love.
It's such a chilling line, because he's not saying it with mustache-twirling malice, really. He's saying it with resignation. It establishes Jaime as this incredibly complex villain. He does a monstrous thing, but for a twisted kind of loyalty to his sister.
Bran survives the fall, but he's in a coma. And then an assassin comes in the night to finish the job with a very unique weapon. A dagger with a dragonbone hilt and a Valyrian steel blade.
Which Catelyn, Bran's mother, fights off. She grabs the blade with her bare hands, a moment that really shows her maternal ferocity. And then the direwolf, Summer, tears out the assassin's throat.
And Catelyn realizes this wasn't an accident. Someone actively tried to murder her son to keep him quiet.
This changes everything for Catelyn. She realizes there are deadly enemies inside her house, and this specific dagger becomes the smoking gun that leads the Starks directly into the trap of the South.
So let's follow Ned south. He goes to King's Landing. And this is where the genre shifts away from high fantasy to straight-up political noir. Ned is basically acting as a detective here.
He is, and he's a total fish out of water.
Yeah.
Ned operates on honor, duty, and truth. King's Landing operates on lies, spies, and leverage. Ned is investigating the sudden death of Jon Arryn, and his main clue is a book.
A boring, heavy, dusty old book, the lineages and histories of the great houses.
Exactly. It's genetic detective work in a world without DNA testing. Ned reads the physical descriptions of the Baratheon line going back generations. Black of hair, black of hair, black of hair. Every single time a Baratheon married a Lannister in history, the kids had black hair.
But Joffrey, the crown prince, and his siblings are blonde, golden-haired, exactly like their mother Cersei and her brother Jaime.
And Ned realizes the truth. The seed is strong. Robert has no legitimate children. The heirs to the throne are products of incest between the queen and her brother. This is the deadly secret that got Jon Arryn killed.
But Ned isn't the only player in town. We have to talk about the other players in this game, specifically Littlefinger and Viserys.
Peter Baelish, known as Littlefinger, he's the master of coin. He presents himself as this helpful friend of the Starks, an old childhood friend of Catelyn's. But look at his actions in the text. He tells Catelyn that the dagger used to attack Bran belonged to Tyrion Lannister.
Which is a complete lie.
It is a massive lie, a verifiable lie if anyone had bothered to check closely. And it's the lie that essentially starts the War of the Five Kings. Littlefinger thrives on chaos. He wants Stark and Lannister to tear each other apart so he can climb the ladder in the aftermath.
And then there's Varys, the master of whisperers, the eunuch.
Varys is fascinating. He speaks entirely in riddles. He tells Ned that he serves the realm. He's the one who warns Ned that the Lannisters are incredibly dangerous. But he also plays his own very deep game. He presents a riddle about power that is really central to the book's entire philosophy.
I love this part.
He asks, a king, a priest, and a rich man stand between a sellsword and a pot of gold. Who does the sellsword obey?
The king says it is the law, the priest says it is the gods, the rich man says it is the gold.
Right. And the answer is, power resides where men believe it resides. It's a trick, a shadow on the wall. Varys understands that power is an illusion, a performance. Ned, on the other hand, thinks power comes from the title, from the law, from pieces of paper.
He's wrong.
Dead wrong.
So Ned figures out the truth about the children, and he confronts Cersei directly. And this, honestly, is the moment where Ned completely seals his own fate.
It's the moment his honor kills him. He warns her. He meets her in the Godswood and tells her he knows everything. He gives her a chance to flee into exile with her children because he doesn't want to see them killed by Robert's wrath.
He shows her mercy.
He does. And how does she respond? With what is easily the most iconic line in the book.
When you play the Game of Thrones, you win or you die. There is no middle ground.
She is telling him explicitly, you think this is a game about honor? No. This is about absolute survival. You showed me mercy, which I interpret as fatal weakness. You just handed me the time I need to kill you.
And she strikes immediately. King Robert goes hunting and gets gored by a boar. But it's heavily implied he was given incredibly strong wine by his squire, Lancel Lannister. It's negligence bordering on direct assassination.
And when Robert dies, Ned tries to secure the throne for the rightful heir according to the law, Stannis Baratheon. But he's completely outmaneuvered. Littlefinger, who Ned thought was his firm ally, betrays him right in the throne room.
The gold cloaks turn their spears on Ned's men. Littlefinger holds a knife to Ned's throat and whispers, "I did warn you not to trust me."
It's brutal. The hero is in chains. The bad guys have decisively won. And the reader is left reeling because we are trained by decades of fantasy novels to expect the hero to escape the trap. We're waiting for the cavalry to ride in.
But Martin is showing us that in a corrupt, realistic system, the honest man is the first one to fall.
While all this political maneuvering is happening, we have two characters who are sort of on the fringes, dealing with their own identity issues. The broken and the bastards, as we called it in the outline. Tyrion Lannister and Jon Snow.
Tyrion is such a compelling character because he is a Lannister, he has the wealth, but he's an outcast. He's a dwarf, his father Tywin hates him, his sister hates him, but he has this amazing connection with Jon Snow early in the book.
He visits the wall, and he gives Jon some of the best advice in the entire series.
He does. He sees Jon sulking outside a feast about being a bastard, and Tyrion says, "All dwarfs may be bastards, yet not all bastards need be dwarves."
He advises Jon, "Never forget what you are. The rest of the world will not. Wear it like armor, and it can never be used to hurt you."
That is just profound psychological insight. Own your vulnerability. Make it your strength.
And Tyrion explains his own philosophy. Jon asks him why he reads constantly. And Tyrion says, "A mind needs books as a sword needs a whetstone." Tyrion knows he cannot fight with muscle or a lance. He has to fight with his brain.
And we see that empathy in him, too. He designs a special saddle for Bran Stark so the boy can ride a horse again, even though he's paralyzed from the fall.
Which is surprisingly kind for a Lannister.
It really is.
He says, "I have a tender spot in my heart for cripples, bastards, and broken things." He identifies with them on a fundamental level. But then, thanks to Littlefinger's lie about the dagger, Catelyn Stark arrests Tyrion at the inn at the crossroads.
This scene is so tense. She calls upon the bannermen of her father who happened to be in the room to seize him. "In the name of King Robert and the good lords you serve."
It's a powerful moment for Catelyn, reclaiming her agency and taking action. But strategically, it is a total disaster. She takes him up to the Eyrie to her sister Lysa Arryn. And this is where we see a trial that is anything but fair.
Lysa is completely unhinged. She's sitting there still breastfeeding her 6-year-old son. She wants Tyrion to fly out the moon door, which is just a hole in the floor that drops thousands of feet.
Tyrion is in a hopeless situation, but he uses their own rules against them. He demands a trial by combat. He gambles his life on finding a champion.
And enter Bronn.
Bronn is a sellsword. He doesn't fight for honor, he fights for money. And the text brilliantly contrasts him with Sir Vardis Egan, the Knight of the Vale who fights for Lysa. Vardis is heavy, weighed down by ceremonial armor and chivalry. Bronn is light, quick, and completely dirty.
Bronn wins by literally tiring the old knight out, backing him into a statue, and then just killing him. Lysa screams that he fought without honor.
And Bronn says, "No, he did," pointing to the dead guy.
That's amazing.
It is the exact same lesson Ned is learning down in the South at the very same time. Honor gets you killed. Pragmatism keeps you alive. Tyrion walks free. Not because he was innocent, though he actually was innocent of the crime he was accused of, but because he had gold and a hired killer. A Lannister always pays his debts.
So Tyrion is free, but the arrest has already triggered a war. Tywin Lannister, the patriarch, is not happy. His son was taken by a Stark. He invades the Riverlands. And now we have actual armies marching.
And this brings us to Robb Stark. Ned is locked in the dungeon, so Robb, his eldest son, calls the banners. He's only a boy, really 15 years old, but he has to become a man overnight to save his father.
The Whispering Wood. This is Robb's first big test as a commander.
Yeah.
And he absolutely crushes it.
He does. And notice exactly how he does it. He uses deception. He sends a small force under Roose Bolton to distract Tywin's main army, while he takes his fast cavalry and ambushes Jaime Lannister in the woods.
He outsmarts the Kingslayer.
He splits his army, which is a massive military risk, but it pays off. They capture Jaime Lannister alive. It looks like the Starks might actually win this thing. They have the Kingslayer as a hostage. They can trade him for Ned.
And that is what everyone expects to happen. Even the characters in the book fully expect it. We'll trade the Kingslayer for Lord Stark. It's the logical, honorable move in this society.
And then George R.R. Martin pulls the rug out from under the entire world.
The execution of Ned Stark.
It's the scene that traumatized a generation of readers. Ned is brought to the steps of the great sept of Baelor. He confesses to treason, a false confession, mind you, to save his daughters, Sansa and Arya. He sacrifices his honor, the thing he values most in the entire world, for their lives.
And he expects mercy. He expects to be sent to the wall to take the black.
But Joffrey is a wild card. He's cruel, he's arrogant, and he's stupid. He completely ignores his mother, he ignores his seasoned advisors, and he orders the execution on a whim. Bring me his head.
The description of this scene is just gut-wrenching. Arya is hiding in the crowd on a statue, drawing her little training sword needle. Sansa is screaming on the high seat. Varys is rushing forward to try and stop it. Ilyn Payne brings down Ice, the great sword. And the protagonist, the moral center of the book, is dead.
It creates a massive vacuum. If the hero can die, no one is safe. The unwritten rules of storytelling have been broken. Martin basically said, if you make mistakes in this world, you die, even if you are the main character on the poster.
And the aftermath is immediate. The North doesn't just get mad, they secede from the kingdom entirely.
The great John Umber gives that incredible speech. He draws his huge sword and points it at Robb. Why should we be ruled by these lords from the south who know nothing of us? And the chant begins. The king in the north.
It gives me chills just reading it in the notes. They aren't fighting to put Stannis or Renly on the Iron Throne. They're fighting for total independence.
It's a moment of immense triumph and unity, but it's heavily shadowed by the tragedy of Ned's death. They have a new king, but they've lost their father. They are entirely alone against the might of the Iron Throne.
While the North explodes and the South schemes, we have to look east, because there is a whole other story happening with Daenerys Targaryen.
Daenerys starts this book in a position of total powerlessness. She is quite literally a pawn. Her older brother Viserys, the Beggar King, is abusive and cruel. He sells her to a Dothraki horse lord called Drogo in exchange for an army.
The Dothraki wedding is intense. It's barbaric splendor. The book notes that a Dothraki wedding without at least 3 deaths is deemed a dull affair. And she receives a very specific wedding gift, 3 stone eggs.
Dragon eggs from the Shadowlands beyond Ashai. Stone, everyone says. Dead. Fossilized by the years. But Daenerys feels a warmth from them that absolutely no one else does.
Daenerys' arc is really about finding her agency. She starts out terrified of Drogo, but she learns to love him, and more importantly, she learns the power of her position as Khaleesi.
She finds her footing and she stands up to Viserys. There's that deeply satisfying moment where Viserys threatens her on the plains and she looks at him and realizes he's just a weak, pathetic man. She hits him with her belt. And later, when Viserys foolishly draws a sword in the sacred city of East Dothraki, demanding his crown from Drogo, Drogo actually gives it to him.
A crown for a king! Molten gold poured right over his head.
It's gruesome. But look at how Daenerys watches him die. Her internal thought is chilling. He was no dragon. Fire cannot kill a dragon. She isn't horrified. She's accepting a fundamental truth. She is the true dragon, not him.
But tragedy strikes her too. Drogo gets a wound in battle. It gets infected. He falls from his horse. And Daenerys loses everything in a matter of days. Her husband, her unborn child through blood magic, and her army. The Khalasar leaves her behind.
She is left with a few loyal followers, a catatonic husband whom she has to mercy kill with a pillow, and 3 stones.
The climax of her storyline, and really of the book, is the pyre.
This is where magic returns to the world in a real, undeniable, terrifying way. She builds a massive funeral pyre for Drogo. She ties the treacherous witch Mirri Maz Duur to it. She places the 3 eggs inside around Drogo's body. And then, defying all logic and reason, she steps into the roaring fire herself.
Surrendering to the heat of the fire.
She surrenders to the element of her house, fire and blood. And when the fire finally burns down to ashes in the morning, Ser Jorah Mormont finds her sitting amidst the smoking logs. She is naked, she is unburnt, and crawling on her are 3 living hatchlings.
It's the birth of dragons. It's the perfect counterbalance to the others in the prologue. Ice is rising in the frozen north, fire is reborn in the east.
And Daenerys rises with them. She is no longer a pawn to be traded. She is the mother of dragons. It's the ultimate empowerment fantasy, contrasting incredibly sharply with the bleak, grounded reality of the Starks.
So let's synthesize all of this. We have these 3 massive threads colliding.
You have the White Walkers representing death. A cold, unfeeling, inevitable end that comes for everyone, regardless of politics. You have the Starks representing honor, which in this brutal world is a liability that can cost you your head. And you have the dragons representing power. Raw, magical, destructive power.
And the title of the book itself, A Game of Thrones.
It's ironic, isn't it? The lords in the south are playing this intricate game, Cersei, Littlefinger, Tywin. They're completely obsessing over who gets to sit on the metal chair, but the real existential threats are on the extreme edges of the map. Ice and fire are coming, and the game is just a distraction.
It's like fighting over who gets the best cabin on the Titanic while the iceberg is looming right in front of the ship.
Perfectly put. The squabbling of the powerful is rendering the entire realm defenseless against the actual threat.
So what does this all mean for you listening? Why does this book grip us so hard?
I think it's because it respects the reader's intelligence. It tells us that choices have real permanent consequences. Being quote-unquote good isn't enough. You have to be smart. You have to understand the world you live in. Ned Stark was a genuinely good man, but he didn't understand the game he was playing, and he died for it.
And Tyrion, who is cynical and somewhat amoral, survives because he understands the rules perfectly.
Exactly. It forces us to question our core assumptions about stories. We expect the hero to be saved at the last minute by a sudden change of heart or a rescuing army. Martin says, no. Sometimes the axe just falls.
And yet, amidst all that grimness, you have moments of pure transcendence, like the King in the North speech or the birth of the dragons, moments of incredible hope and awe.
It's that masterful balance. The stark beauty and the horror, the grim omens and the summertime kingdom.
Before we sign off, here is a final thought for you to chew on. We talked extensively about how Ned's honor got him killed, but consider this. The North remembers. His men are willing to march south and die for his memory. They declare his teenage son king not because of Robb's resume, but because he is Ned's son. Tywin Lannister rules through fear and gold. Ned ruled through love and honor. In the short term, yes, honor lost. But in the long game, maybe Ned's legacy is far stronger than we think.
That is a deeply fascinating thought. Is honor truly a weakness, or is it simply a different kind of strength that just takes longer to bear fruit? Legacy is a powerful, persistent thing in Westeros.
Something to mull over until next time. Thanks for diving deep with us into A Game of Thrones. Watch out for the cold and keep your dragons close.
Valor Morgulis.
Me next time.